Hey everyone, it's Stacey with NutritionJobs for another edition of Dietitian Job Success. Today I have with me a guest that I have a fun story about how we met, but I'd like to introduce to you Rhyan Geiger. Hi Ryan.
Hi, happy to be here.
Thank you for being here with us and sharing all of your good insight. So, Ryan and I met actually on LinkedIn. And I bring this up because, I'm always telling everybody about how important it is to really get yourself out there on LinkedIn. You never know what kind of opportunities are going to come up. And she wrote a post about this new position that she got. I was very intrigued with what she said and how she got that job and what the job entailed. And I reached out to her to have her on our session here. So I am super excited about her being able to share with you all how to be better as a dietitian and how to get a better job. So, Ryan, maybe you can explain to us a little bit about your background, what you have done in the past, and what you are doing now as a dietitian.
Yes, absolutely. So my career as a dietitian is I think it's very interesting because when I first started out as a dietitian, I knew I wanted to work in community nutrition, but I couldn't find a job at a food bank, and that's like what I really wanted to do. I was like, I need to work at a food bank for whatever reason. Out of college, I was like, I have to do it. I didn't end up working at a food bank, spoiler alert. But I did find my way into community nutrition. And the first job that I had was at the YMCA, and I taught nutrition classes to families. It was $30 an hour, which I was like, this is so good, but it was only like 3 hours per week. So I was making like pennies doing that, but it was very fun. And then from there, I went and worked at a small community clinic. It was a FQHC, which is a federally qualified health center, and that was in Phoenix. And from there, I went to work for a large insurance company, and the goal there was to help create a program in one of their pharmacy stores. So it was a really cool concept, but then the pandemic came and it was inside the stores. We were just getting started, so it didn't last super long, did a ton of layoffs, and I was like, what do I do now? So I ended up working for myself for a year and a half, doing freelance writing. I wrote a cookbook. I worked on social media brand deals, kind of just playing the social media game, seeing how the big boom of like Instagram and all social media platforms, it was such a great time to get into that. So I just jumped right in. And then as everything started to come back into normalcy, the pay started to slow down, and I thought I should get like a real job. And that led me to the current company I work for, which is Foodsmart.
Oh, I love your winding path, and I love hearing like how you pivoted along the way. Obviously, like you knew what your goal was, and how you sort of had to pivot then when your job opportunity sort of went out of your control, and you got to work with FoodSmart now. Can you tell us a little bit about so I think what's interesting is the patient population that you serve. You helped me understand a little bit better about that. So can you share with everybody else about your patient population?
Yeah, so Foodsmart primarily works with Medicaid patients, which is very rare in telenutrition or nutrition in itself, because Medicaid has a lot of multifaceted things that go along with it, which is really cool that Foodsmart is able to help so many members who are often in communities or often a population who are overlooked or don't get the care that they need because of finances. So it's primarily with Medicaid. So it's so cool. And I started working as just a contract dietitian at Foodsmart in 2023 in December. And I was like, I'll just pick up a couple extra hours, make a bit of money. And I only had planned to stay for a couple months just until I was like, on social media, you get burnt out and you're like, I'm done doing this. I was like, okay, I'm done doing this. I'm going to take a little break. I'll go back to it. But then after a couple months, I realized I really liked working with the Medicaid population because you get to be so creative because the resources that they have are often very limited or very slim. So you're like, okay, you've got 5 ingredients. What can we do with it? Or you have no car to get to the grocery store. How can we get you the groceries that you need? So it's really awesome just to be able to help such a cool population and just to be really creative as well. So I didn't end up leaving Foodsmart after my pretend deadline that I had set for myself, and I went full time. And then after that, about a year after I had worked there, I became the clinical liaison, which is the role I have now.
Oh, that's really great. I'm thankful that you shared all of that. That's interesting that you mentioned something that I hadn't really thought about before. So I used to serve when I first started working in clinical, and I did a little bit of outpatient within my hospital, nutrition counseling. And I was in an area where there was a lot of both Medicare and Medicaid patients. And so uh, it was, you had to be very, very creative in helping people implement all of these fancy strategies that you had about how to manage their disease. And you're right, like I hadn't thought about that until you just said it now. Like the puzzle of trying to work with them and with their resources, and the joy and the satisfaction, like when they would come back for a follow-up, and the success that they would have, and their family members were super excited. I forgot about that, and I'm so glad that you shared that, working with that population, because you're right. I think a lot of people in private practice or working with a nutrition health company that is either venture sponsored or backed or whatever it might be, people are thinking that these are all first party people, payment people, and it's a sort of a privileged population. And that's not true. That's not always the case. And there's some really amazing benefits of being able to work with this population. So I'm glad you shared that. So do you remember back when you were onboarding as a 1099, a contract employee? What was that process like? Or how was it that you were able to help yourself stand out among the applicants in both the resume process, the application process, the job interview process? If you can sort of recall back to when that happened, what were some ideas that you can share with other people?
Yeah, absolutely. I remember when I first came into contact with Foodsmart was at Fancy. It must have been 2023. So it was October 2023. And then I applied in, I think, end of November, December of 2023. So like I have had the idea and then I pondered on it for like a little while of like, is this like, that moment where you're like, I probably could make a little bit more money, like things are slowing down. Do I want to do something else? Not really sure, like kind of in that limbo. That's where I was. And then I guess at some point I was eventually like, okay, get yourself together. Let's get a little bit of part-time work coming in. So I ended up just applying through the website online. It was a super quick, easy link. And I think the key part of it is really reading the description and answering the questions that are presented and showing what you do that goes along with that question. It's not just answering it and saying like, I can do that or I have done that in the past, but giving concrete examples of like, you want someone who has experience in telehealth. That's not what the application says. I don't know what the question is offhand, but if that's what it says, showing that you're very well versed in telehealth, like what types of things have you done in telehealth that make you stand out as an application versus more standard answers, because we're all dietitians, so we all have the same dietitian skills, but what makes you a little bit different?
I love that, because I like to say that as well, is that you're trying to tell a story about your value and about your ability to do this job. And like you said, looking at what the job description is almost like answering one of those college application questions. Like just the answer is in the question, right? So making sure that when you're saying that you can work remotely and that you are time efficient or that you are responsive or whatever the criteria is, whatever it says in the question, that you're aligning your skills and your value with that, with a story, like with an example of that, and really just outlining what it is that you're able to do. I'm so glad that you mentioned that. That's good. Anything else in the when you actually did a job interview? Anything else that might be helpful for other people?
Oh yeah, the job interview process. That was fun. It was video. I think really just showing your personality when you're talking to someone and not feeling like you have to be a pretend version of yourself or whoever you think that they want you to be, because they want to hire the person that you are. So be the person that you are in your interview.
That sounds good. Yeah, this reminded me of a Mark Twain quip, which I can't think of now. Like, if you don't lie, you don't always have to like keep that up, right? Like, just be who you are, so that they can find a place for you in their lineup. Yeah, that makes sense. What sort of? So I'm now curious about sort of the day in the life of how you're working and what you're doing. Can you share with us sort of what a day in the life looks like for you now?
Yeah, a day in the life now looks a little bit different than it did when I was seeing patients. But what's really fun about this role as the clinical liaison is that every day is a little bit different. So it varies. Some days I present to executives, some days I demo what the member journey looks like with Foodsmart, some days I create presentations and materials. It's kind of all different skill sets, which come from the jobs that I've previously had, or come from that freelancing, or come from writing, really taking those skills that you've built up as you go as a dietitian, because we're always building skills, and then seeing, okay, how can I use this skill in this job? And then it's something that you really enjoy doing because there's skills you like and there's skills that you built up. So that is what day to day looks like now. It kind of varies, but presentations, demos, things of that nature.
That's good. Thinking about your skill sets and thinking about who you are, sort of as you are, your skills. What can you share with us? What has made you successful in your position based on the skills? So tell us about maybe the skills that you have that you were sort of born with, and some skills that you developed along the way to help you be successful.
Mhm. I just recently took my Clifton Strengths, which is like a skill assessment, which was really cool because I've never done anything like that. And I feel like it was really in line with what I do day to day and the strengths that I possess. And one of them was being an activator. And when I was growing up, I had a single mom. So she hustled. She was always like, I got to get this done. And so that I feel like kind of passed on to me of like, all right, you want something? Figure out how to get it done. What can you do? Like, how can you make yourself better to get what you want? And I don't know if that's a skill that I was born with, but I saw it at such a young age that I feel like I was born with kind of just like a, if you want something, just go for it and don't be afraid to do it. Because if you're afraid to do it, then it will never happen. So that was one of my Clifton strengths that I really, really, really loved, that I feel like I was born with, but also kind of have developed.
That's good. What sort of tools? Oh, let me just ask you back to your skills again. Uh, what skills have you had to develop, or maybe skills that you weren't expecting to do, whether it's leadership or communication? I don't think it's either of those two, but what skills have you identified that you need to improve on, that you have, or that have helped you in your career?
Mhm. Surprisingly, public speaking, I hate it. No, not anymore, but I hated it so much. Like in college, or even going back to like middle school, when they did popcorn reading, and they were like, okay, we're going to go around the room and everyone reads a sentence. I would count to be like, which sentence is mine? And then practice in my head before it was me. So, because I didn't want to read out loud, I couldn't read perfectly fine, but I just did not like it at all. And now my job is presenting and talking to people that are not myself. So I think that's a skill that I've developed and just practiced. And really, with public speaking or anything like that, it really is just practice. And if you don't practice it, then you really can't. You can talk to yourself in the mirror, like on The Sims, or you can get charisma points, but you can't really get that much better at it if you don't actually practice.
You're so true. And there's so many different ways now that people can practice, besides just looking at yourself in the mirror. Like you can create video tutorials for your patients, for your population that you're serving. Like there are so many ways to make it happen. I mean, one of the reasons I like being able to interview other people is so that I can sort of keep up to date with what people are doing and share with my audience, but also so I can connect with people and do that in a visual way. And so you're totally right. Just getting some practice, putting yourself out there. There are so many different opportunities that people can find. They're everywhere. Everyone wants to hear us talk. Everyone wants to know what we know. So there's just a lot of opportunity. That's really helpful. Switching gears a little bit, tell me what types of tools you use, whether it's computer programs or any online tools that you use, or outside of online tools that you use in your practice now, in your work and in your job, that you think might be of benefit to other people to hear.
Mhm. With tools, I think there are so many tools out there. Just having a basic knowledge of like Google, or even Microsoft. I've worked at the jobs I've had, some of them use Microsoft, some of them use Google. So just having a basic knowledge of like, how do these work, who belongs where, and how would I use them has been really helpful. That way, if you get a job and they're like, we're using this, you're not spending extra time trying to figure out the software, feeling overwhelmed with the tools that they're using, and then also the job. So having a basic understanding of those is what I would recommend, and that's what I found super helpful. And then staying up to date with new things. So especially now is like AI. So what can AI do? How can you use AI? Don't just rely on AI, of course, but like using it as a starting point of getting you going with something. And then you could use it for grammar or spelling or different things of that nature. Can all be really useful in a day to day, or if you want to go super old school, I do have like a piece of paper here and a
Me too.
pen. I love pen and paper. Can't go wrong with it.
I'm glad you said though to keep up to date with what's coming out, because I think a lot of dietitians who are sort of at the end of their career but don't want to quit yet and are feeling themselves like they're worried they're not going to be relevant. And I think just watching YouTubes or watching other dietitians use a tool, or ask another dietitian how to use that tool, whether it's Slack, whether it's Canva. Like I still don't like properly know how to use Slack, and I'm trying really hard. And but there's all these new tools that are out there, Trello or Asana, a lot of communication tools or project management tools that you wouldn't think you would need to use, that is not related to nutritional analysis software or something that you thought was going to be the one tool that you needed to use. But there are, lots of new things coming out all the time. I subscribe to a lot of newsletters that sort of say what's going on with AI, and I like to check out to see what the tool is, and just to get a good understanding of it. And you don't have to be super proficient in something, but at least be able to speak a little bit of that tool's nomenclature, or to be able to understand like what that tool even does. Like all these names have nothing to do with what their actual function is, like Trello, so I think that's helpful. And a lot of people can find tutorials on how to work these programs on YouTube, of course. So there's just like what you said, like just make it happen. That being a skill set of, if you think you're up for a position that, and they're requiring you to be able to use Google Workspace or Microsoft Workspace, whichever one has which, that, just getting a little overview of it, so that that's not an issue in the application process, or getting that job. So, Ryan, these have been so helpful. Okay, I always like to end on money and talking about dietitians and how we can earn more money as dietitians. So, what are your thoughts on that? And how do you think that dietitians can position themselves to earn more money?
Yeah, it's a very hot question. And it is one that has, I feel like, a lot of different like things that are different ways you could look at it. And the thing that I feel like has gotten me to where I am feeling really excited about how far I've come is just saying yes and seeking new opportunities and projects,
Hmm.
because you build up skills that you can then sell. So you have skills that you can sell and say, I can do this. But if you don't have skills that you built up that are different, you don't have anything to sell extra to say you should pay me more, because look at all of these skills I have. I have XYZ, and maybe the person who's next to you doesn't have any of those skills. So if you're both at no skills, you're equal kind of in pay. But if you can say, look at all these cool things I can do, that kind of increases your opportunity for making more, or doing side projects or things that are like if you have a regular 9 to 5 job, then you can go venture off and do writing. Or I wrote a cookbook because I liked recipe developing, or things like that. You can use those skills to then supplement your income in a different way.
Ooh, Ryan, that was so helpful. Also, because you said something that I thought was really helpful, and that is to talk about your value and increasing your value by selling what it is that you have of value, and not just saying, well, we deserve more, right? Like, I'm worth more. Like, here's how I am worth more. Here are like looking at the job description and looking at some of the things that are in there, or your boss's job description, or the next level up, and seeing what it is that can be done and how you can move on up in that way. But thinking of value, thinking about how you can become more valuable. Right. And this was really awesome. I really appreciate all of your words. I know I'm speaking for everybody else as well. You had some really good pearls in there. So thank you very much for your time. How can people find you if they want to connect with you?
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn just using my first name, first and last name. I guess if you search my first name, I'm not sure what would come up, but it's Rhyan Geiger, or you can find me on Instagram at PHX Vegan Dietitian.
Oh, nice. I'll put all the links in the show notes below. Thank you again, Ryan, and thank you everybody for listening. Bye for
Thank
now.
you.